Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, I was actually a guest on someone else's podcast. A friend of mine named Zale Mennick runs the podcast called Preconceived, the Preconceived Podcast, and he brings on experts in different industries to talk about preconceived notions. So he talks about things like psychedelics and divorce and healthcare and cannabis and just any industry where you think that there's some preconceived notions. He has made it his quest to interview an expert and get to the bottom of the way that that industry really works. So I had a blast. This isn't the full episode. This is just a small portion of the episode. If you like what you heard here, then definitely go check out the full episode on the Preconceived Podcast. The information is in the description of this episode. I hope you like it. We spoke about a bunch of fun things. The last thing I'll mention about it is this. Over the last 4 years, magicians have been asking me to bring a layperson on the podcast to chat with them about magic from a layperson's perspective. I always find that silly because I'm always like, well, you can, talk to a layperson and find out about their perspective. I don't have any special lay people, but this was actually a special episode because this was a layperson who was interested in digging deep to the preconceived notions in the world of magic. And we spoke about things that I think are conversations that maybe magicians don't often or always have with lay people. So I enjoyed it. I hope you will. Here it is, a wonderful little bit from the Preconceived Podcast. In stand-up comedy, no two acts look the same. They shouldn't. And if somebody tells a joke, they're funny because they wrote the joke that they told. Magic works more like cooking than it does stand-up comedy. So my example is this. I do not know who invented chicken soup. If you saw me make a chicken soup, you might, in the magic lens, you might assume that I invented chicken soup. What I'm trying to share with you is that a good magician, like a good chef, will have his own chicken soup. And if he is good, his chicken soup will be so good and so his that if you tasted it on the other side of the world, you would go, this is Jonah's chicken soup. You wouldn't say this is chicken soup. You would say, this is Jonah's chicken soup. That is the better lens to understand magic, which is I might be doing the same plot of a card trick as a magician that you saw on a stage, on The Illusionist, whatever. It might literally be the exact same trick. Literally. Except the way that I do it and the way that he does it, both the mechanics and the words and how we conduct ourselves and how long it is and what parts we've added, what parts we've taken away are what makes them signaturely ours.
It's an art.
Yes. But like, I like to make that separation of thinking a bit like cooking instead of like comedy because, there was a guy, he was like a football player for the Green Bay Packers, and he went on America's Got Talent, and he did some tricks, and like America loved him, and he got golden buzzers and stuff. And I certainly don't care. Doesn't matter. The more magic in pop culture, the better. But there's loads of magicians that were sour because he was doing magic tricks that you can go to the Toronto magic shop called the Browser's Den of Magic, and you could buy those tricks. Mm-hmm. And he didn't really add much considerably to the trick in terms of what he said and what he did and anything like that. So magicians were sour because they were like, what the hell? I've been spending 15 years of my life working on magic tricks. This guy, just picked it up from the store and he's doing nothing special. And millions of people in America think that he invented these tricks and he's this saint of magic who was secretly playing football. But really, he went to the store. It's like you buying a cookbook and taking your 3 dishes onto Rachel Ray as like the best person ever. And like all the actual chefs at home, stomping their feet and getting all pissed off.
Yeah, like this guy's getting the press for this thing that anybody could just figure out if they bought this book really simply.
Literally, those are the words that come out of the mouths of many magicians, like those words verbatim. It's not true all the time. And more with television, we are seeing the people's unique acts that makes it. Like Shin Lim, I don't know if that's a name that you know. but Shin Lim won America's Got Talent like a year or 2 years ago or something with an act that he had previously won the equivalent of the Magic Olympics with a year earlier. So that is us being like, heck yeah, Shin Lim's awesome. Shin Lim's act, which swept the Magic Nation, swept America's Got Talent too, and we love him, and he's great, and I love it.
It seems like there, at least the way it's portrayed in the media, it seems like there can be some contentiousness between magicians.
Like any industry, there's a few like beefs. A major beef is between kind of the old guard in magic and the newer, the younger magicians. And the old guard in magic says that this books is the way that magic secrets are passed on, or videos, but you have to find it and discover it and find it from the right places. And then it's too easy for, they had to drive 7 hours to go to a lecture to learn from a magician, to learn one secret that became so valuable. And now you can find it on YouTube, somebody teaching it, and the kids don't value these secrets. And also anybody can Google and find things. Like not every trick is there, but you can certainly start learning magic on your own for free on YouTube with dozens of tricks that people have uploaded that like may or may not be tricks that are theirs to teach. So there's a lot of contention in magic because some of the old guard is saying, why are you exposing secrets to non-magicians? But also, and this one is actually a more relevant thing for them to speak up about, which I don't disagree, is some magician worked on their trick for 10 years and they sell their trick or their book, but then you explained how to do it for free on YouTube. And instead of people going to buy their book, they're watching your shitty ass video. And that is where there's a lot of contention in magic, because like you can go learn magic from a 13-year-old on YouTube who is giving you secondhand secrets. He's learning and then he is sharing what he learned to YouTube, which is in some ways okay because you're learning, but certainly you will do better learning right from the source. It's like someone telling you they have a black belt and you being like, where did you learn? And they're like, well, YouTube videos. And you being like, well, it just doesn't feel like you have a black belt. Like,
yeah, it must be frustrating when everything is accessible on the internet and there's certain information that people just don't want to get on the internet, especially in this industry. But I want to ask you about that Green Bay Packers example, because let's say, anybody could have accessed that information that he accessed in order to do that trick. If it had been a harder to learn trick, if it had been a more difficult trick to do, would there have been the same disappointment in the magician community? Or would they have said, wow, that's a really tough one to pull off because he read the same thing that everybody read, but so few people are actually able to do it?
Great question. So first thing I'll say is this. Commercial magic is usually not difficult magic. Okay. So I can teach you how to do a trick that is as easy as you following the instructions, and it'll work every time, and you can do it, and you need not understand sleight of hand or anything. You can follow the steps, not even know how it works, but perform it as if you do, and it'll still work. Generally speaking, marketable, really, really marketable effects are not really, really hard to do because then nobody wants to do them. So in general, that doesn't happen. If someone is doing wickedly difficult, challenging sleight of hand on their stuff, it probably has a lot of them written all over it because of how much of them they have to do. So you just don't see it. You don't see someone, or if they do, if I for example do a really, really technical piece of magic, but it's someone else's, it'll likely be an ode to that person.
Makes sense.
Like if I'm doing all of their mechanics and their words and their script, it better be an ode to that person. In which case, that might be a nice, respectful thing, for me to do an ode to a magician, a Canadian magician from 100 years ago who did this and that. That could be a really, really great thing.
I want to shift to a different, I don't know if you'd call it a different type of magic, but this idea of precision. And I remember when I was watching The Illusionists, there was one scene where somebody was basically throwing knives very, very close to somebody's head and arms, and they were aiming at an apple or something like that. And part of me was thinking, is that magic or is that just really good precision?
So the first thing I'll say about it is that there's many industries that get closely overlapped with magic that aren't necessarily magic. So some examples are juggling, hypnosis, circus, pickpocketing, different things like that, which aren't exactly magic, but are certainly close cousins. My short answer to that, to your question, is precision is not magic. Precision is precision. Magic is magic. Magic should technically be defined as doing something that is not possible, that is out of the ordinary. I'm going to show you a trick right now. And the reason I'm showing it to you is because there's a lot of magic that I like where the trick is not impossible, it is improbable. But the improbability makes it feel extra impossible. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. Okay, here. I'm going to give these a quick mix. And can you say the name of any card that you like?
Jack of diamonds.
Jack of diamonds, perfect. I can give the cards some cuts like this to try to like guess at maybe different positions in the deck, like this, or maybe to try to hope that I can find your card. But ultimately, you are going to find your card. Instead of me trying to guess, you're going to find it. So I'm going to put cards on the table. I'm going to turn down like this. I'm going to put cards on the table. I'm even going to turn them face up as I do. And you can see that they're all different. When you feel right, when the moment strikes you, you say the word stop. Still another Jack. Okay. And when you want, you just say stop.
Stop.
There. Now I want to be fair with you. Are you happy there? Do you want one more, two more, three more?
No. I'm happy there. I gotta.
You don't want two more.
No, I gotta be steadfast.
You don't want five more.
No.
Not six more.
Should I?
It's up to you. I just want it to be your decision.
No. This is my decision. I'm good.
It's this one.
Okay.
I'm asking you, A or B or C?
It's.
Or A. Or A is what you said, but I just want to.
I'll go with. Yeah. No. I'm sticking with A.
This one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it over here. Had you said B or C, it would have been completely wrong. You insisted on A, and that's exactly the Jack of Diamonds.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but but that's a good example of like, you could have changed your mind. You could have said stop at any moment. You could have said B. You could have said C. You didn't. I knew you wouldn't. But
did you know I wouldn't, or
yes.
Did you just switch the card?
No, I knew you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't because.
And I know that I'm not trying to ask you to divulge your secrets, but did you just do a quick one on?
So I'll explain. It's somewhere in the middle. So I know what you're going to do because I did it 100 times. 10,000 times. So I know what you're going to do. So I know how it ends. If you choose to be a stickler and mess with me, good news, I have a wicked tool belt of stuff that's going to make me come out of this A-okay. The good news is like my magic can stand up to a bully. Bully me. Go ahead. Go ahead. So I'm taking the card. He goes, oh, I put it back. I don't want to put it back. No problem. I'll read your mind that way. I can stand up to a bully. So the real answer is yes, I know what you're going to do. Am I right 100% of the time? No. You can choose to, at the last minute, go, you know what? C. You could have chose to do that.
But you're good enough to pivot in that situation.
Yeah, and I knew you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And
because I'm not a dickhead.
No, but just in general, I mean, I can give you a little bit of behind the scenes why I knew psychologically, but like I just I've done it so many times, I've visited it so many times that no matter how much I pressured you, you weren't going anywhere.
There's other stuff like that, and I don't know if you would call it mentalist, but when I saw The Illusionist, the craziest thing I saw was where he started listing specific birthdays, like November the 12th, 1954, will you please stand up? And somebody stood up, and he did that for about 10 people. And yes, you could argue that if you're really a skeptic, you could say, well, maybe everybody gave their birth dates when they signed up. But I don't buy that. I believe that this was not doctored magic. I mean, that is just to the next level. How do you comprehend that?
So let's talk for a second about doctored magic, okay? Because I think that's a really great place to start.
Not a good term, is it?
No, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. The question is this. If I said to you, I have a card in mind, the 3 of hearts, say stop. Whatever. And you say stop, and I go, bam, and it's a 3 of hearts, okay? and you go, wow, that was a cool trick. But the way I did it is the whole deck was 3 of hearts. Just pretend for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Am I a cheater? Or am I just a magician? Am I just secretly doing stuff? That's my job, to secretly be up to no good. So the first thing I'll say is it's really hard, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's really hard to draw a line in magic and say, well, if you do it, if you secretly pull it off this way, then you're a cheater. But if you secretly pull it off this way, then you're a real magician.
You're right. It's gray. But would it be wrong for me to feel like it is a little bit of cheating if the person who did that in The Illusionists did have a list of everybody's birthdays and just memorized 10 dates before he went out?
You may feel robbed. You may feel robbed that the truth, and I don't know exactly. I don't even know exactly what it is you're referring to. So, and even if I did, I'm not gonna tell you how it works. But you might feel robbed.
Don't worry, I'm pretty sure I figured it out.
You might feel robbed that you thought that it was one thing, but that it wasn't. You know, one thing that I'll give you an example that many magicians don't like is stooges. So, hey, I hired you to pretend to be an actor in the audience and just say that I did this trick. For the most part, 99% of the time, magicians don't use stooges because it's so frowned upon that it's just not like magicians don't use stooges. That's an example of one.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's an example where it just wouldn't feel right to me.
But a magician finding someone's birthday secretly, I don't think that it's any more unfair than a magician finding out someone's card secretly. I don't think it's any more unfair than a magician finding out any kind of information. I mean, like, it's, you know, we talked about this idea of, I know it's not true, but it feels like it's true. But I know it's not true. That's where you're supposed to live. Like, that's if a magic trick works. You're living on top of that house, falling either to the left or the right, and saying to yourself, I know it's not true. I know how the world works. But God damn it, how else could it be? And that's where you're living right now with this mind reading guy. You're like, I know that this guy could not know these people's birthdays by looking at them. I know that's not possible to be. But I certainly don't think he went around collecting birthdays. And other than that, I have no real good answer for it. So my answer is he's doing his job. And to talk one more degree about mentalism is to say that magic is pulled off using a wide array of tools. Sleight of hand, psychology, speaking, intonation, like endless lists of tools that I can, and those tools are all fair play for mentalists.
Yeah, I think that's really eloquently said. I think the mentalism stuff for me is some of the most interesting. Like when you just did that card trick with me, it's one thing when somebody says pick a card, any card, and I pick it and I physically have isolated it. It's another thing when I only psychologically, mentally thought of the number and you're able to pick that number.
For sure. And I feel you. I feel that it's hard to, you know, many people feel really strong about mentalism. There was a big resurgence in mentalism about 5 or 10 years ago, just because it's so groundbreaking. Like I said, that rug pulling out of under you. It's like, how could you possibly know? I wrote this down and only I held on to it. How could you possibly know what it is that I wrote down to myself? And there's a certain level of that which is different than the woman goes in the box and the box that cuts in half and you're like, I don't know how it works, but I feel like it doesn't really affect my life all that much. Totally. But the mentalist does. The mentalist feels like people can be like this in the world. And I want to make a note, you know, and this is a story I like telling. It's actually not my story. Story of my roommate, who's my business partner at Toronto Magic Company. But he does mentalism. So he's a mentalist. And his aunt, who is a really intelligent lawyer, basically asked him, said, wow, this is so amazing how you're able to look at people and know exactly whether they're telling the truth or lying. And he stopped her and he said, I don't want you to go into the world thinking that that's true, because you're a lawyer and people's actual lives could pivot on you thinking that someone can actually do what I'm pretending to do.
Wow.
So there's some ethical things going on here. If the whole world believes that there are certain people that can just look at you and know when you were born, and look at you and know that you're a liar and that you're doing this and doing this and doing this. So there's ethical issues. And that's why I have no problem saying to you, like, yeah, they could be cheating. That's our job. We're entertainers. It's safe breaking of your reality. The reason why you're not panicking is because this wasn't someone on the street. This was in a theater. That's why you get to sit with your discomfort in like a fun, comfortable way. So we teeter in that realm of like real ethics. So that's why this thought of, is it real, is it not real, is a big conversation in magic. You'll see magicians who do a lot of mind reading-y stuff or maybe ghosty related stuff open their show with a disclaimer. And they'll say, nothing that you're about to see is real. It may look real, it may feel real, and I'm going to pretend that it is, but nothing is. And you might argue, do you need to do that? Do you not need to do that? And magicians debate about this all the time, but I certainly understand it because I've certainly seen a mentalist do a whole entire show and then people approach them afterwards and say, I know you said that it's not real, but can you contact my dead aunt? And what are you to do? Like, what are you supposed to do? That's a real thing that mentalists hear after their show.
You mentioned a placebo lens before. How can we use that lens to view magic?
So there's a beautiful example or story written by an amazing magician. The magician's name is Eugene Berger, and he passed away like last year, 2 years ago, but he was a real guru in the world of magic. And he talks about like the purpose of magic and what magic's for. And I'm going to use my own words, so cautious of the butchering of what he's really saying. But in the old times, there were shamans. And when you would go and visit the shaman in your community, and the shaman was something between the doctor and the spiritual leader and the governor and something like all of that combined. And you would go to the shaman and the shaman would help. And I'll give you an example of something the shaman would do. You would go and you would say, there's incredible pain in my stomach. And the shaman you'd lie down, he'd reach into your stomach and he'd pull out a worm and he would throw it, and he would reach and put a worm and he'd throw it, and then he would rub like this, and then your stomach would be sealed, no wounds, no anything. He pulled 2 worms out, and you feel better, and you start to feel better about your stomach. Now the truth is that the shaman was practicing magic. The worms were not really coming out of their stomach. It was an illusion that the shamans would do to make it feel and appear like the negative energy, the evil, the badness was coming out. And similarly, that we know placebos actually work. We measure the success of drugs against the placebo that actually literally does something, right? Now, obviously it's immoral for a doctor right now to give out placebos instead of, actual drugs. But hypothetically, if the patient was struggling from something that was not a real issue or was a psychosomatic issue, and the doctor could prescribe a placebo, that's a gift. It's a gift that the patient would feel, this now solves my problem. And now, this is how I feel better because of this. And I know now the job of a magician is completely not the same. But I think that is a way to understand why the withholding of the secrets is a benefit for the spectator. Is if you knew it was a placebo, it wouldn't work. If you knew that this was a trick, if you knew the secrets, you would not have this feeling that you have. You would not lose sleep over the show. You would not be thinking about how he could know the names for days and weeks after. You wouldn't be affected by it. The images wouldn't get stuck in your head of impossible things that you've seen and can't comprehend. So the reason I wanted to bring that up is because that's all about like what my job is. I conceal secrets so that you can get the gift of the symbolism that comes through and the magic that comes through, and that you don't get clouded by the truth of the situation. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And I, even in the medical world, I've had conversations about placebo effect before, because we use placebos all the time in medical trials, and it's called the placebo effect because it has an effect, because it works. And if you're going to be entertained, then take that placebo effect if that's going to help you get entertained.
For sure. And I share that because I think that there's a preconceived notion is about magicians withholding their secrets. And I think that if this podcast can change the lens of why they're withholding their secrets, it's not so that you can't have them. You can have them. These books that I've just showed you and talked about that's on my shelf, they're for sale. You don't need to be a blood brother or show your oath to get them. So the secrets of magic are not being kept so that we can be special for any reason. The secrets of magic are being kept for the audiences and for the lay people. And I wish that I could go back, because I need to see 1,000 magic tricks before one fools me. And all I do is watch magic tricks. And I know how all of them work. And I don't mind that. I love it. I enjoy different aspects of watching a trick that I know how it works and all that great stuff. But that gift that all I do all my life is give, I don't get to receive ever.
And if we constantly knew what was behind all of these magic tricks, it would cease to be magic.
I wish everyone knew magic, because magic is amazing. But if everyone knew magic, there wouldn't be any magic. Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, if you learned something, tell a friend, spread the word, share it. If you liked kind of the style of this episode, definitely go check out the Preconceived Podcast. And the last thing I'll say is this: unconventional.fun. You should definitely go check out that URL, because in 1 week, tickets go live, and I believe they're going to be sold out fast. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next Thursday.